Ambassador Susan Wright took a deep breath as the human delegation's shuttle docked with the massive Galactic Council space station. Through the viewport, she could see the neutral star glowing orange against the blackness of space. This meeting would decide the fate of humanity. "Ready your materials," she told her team. "The Vraxians will try to paint us as the aggressors. We must stay calm and stick to facts." The station's docking bay was enormous, filled with ships from 100 different worlds. Guards with blue skin and 4 arms escorted the humans to the Great Chamber. Susan noted how other species moved away as they passed. Humanity, despite being new to space travel, had gained a reputation for rapid expansion that made the older species nervous. The Great Chamber fell silent as the humans entered. 12 alien species sat at a circular table, with the Vraxian delegation directly opposite the human seats. High Commander Zelthur, his gray scales shifting color with his mood, glared at Susan with all 4 of his yellow eyes. Council Mediator Jorkel, a tall being with translucent skin, stood up. "This emergency session will address territorial disputes between humans and the Vraxian Dominion. Both sides have agreed to binding arbitration." Susan stepped forward when called upon. She activated the holographic display, showing images of planets in disputed regions. "The Vraxian Dominion claims these systems as their historic territory," she said. "However, our scans show these worlds were uninhabited when we arrived. Furthermore, we have evidence that Vraxians have been testing biological weapons in these regions." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs as Susan displayed the evidence: dead wildlife and contaminated water sources on 3 different planets. High Commander Zelthur slammed his fist down. "Lies. The humans fabricate evidence to justify their endless expansion." As the argument intensified, Susan noticed her junior diplomat, Eric Miller, was missing from his seat. Seconds later, alarms blared throughout the station. A Vraxian security officer burst into the chamber. "A human has been caught accessing restricted archives." Guards dragged in Eric, who looked terrified. "Ambassador, I was just trying to find more evidence of their weapons testing." High Commander Zelthur stood up, his scales now bright red with rage. "This proves human duplicity. They send spies while pretending to negotiate peace." The Vraxian delegation stormed out of the chamber despite Jorkel's pleas for calm. "The peace talks have officially collapsed," Jorkel announced grimly. "The Council will enter emergency session without human representation." As Susan was escorted back to her ship, her communication device beeped with a message from Earth. Defense Secretary Alan Winters had already received word of the failure. His message was brief but chilling. "Defense Protocol Sierra 7 is now active. Return immediately. War is coming." Captain Olivia Daniels sat rigid in her command chair on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Defiance. The ship's long-range sensors had been working overtime for the past 12 hours, tracking unusual movement near the edge of human space. "Captain, you need to see this," said Gary Patterson, her communications specialist. His face looked pale as he transferred data to the main screen. "I've intercepted partial transmissions from at least 7 Vraxian battle cruisers. They're using military codes." Olivia studied the data. The Vraxian ships were moving in formation, not the random patterns of normal patrol routes. "Are they heading toward any of our colonies?" "Too early to tell, but they've changed course 3 times in ways that make no sense for trade or exploration." Olivia pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All stations on alert. This is not a drill." Meanwhile on Earth, scientist Dr. Paul Harris stared at his computer screen in the Houston Space Center. The astronomical data streaming in from deep space telescopes showed an alarming pattern. He picked up his phone and called his supervisor. "Dr. Morgan, I need you to see this immediately," he said when Linda Morgan answered. "Vraxian ships are positioning themselves near every major human colony world. This isn't random." Within 20 minutes, Linda had verified his findings and sent an urgent message to military intelligence. "This looks like positioning for a coordinated strike," she told Paul as they waited for a response. "They're setting up for war." In Washington, D.C., President Frank Summers walked into a room filled with grim-faced military advisors. Large screens on the wall showed maps of human territory, with red dots marking Vraxian ship positions. "Mr. President," said Intelligence Director Kimberly Walsh, "satellite imagery from our deep space probes confirms Vraxian military forces are mobilizing. We believe they're preparing for a first strike against multiple human worlds simultaneously." She changed the display to show a massive object being towed by 4 Vraxian battleships. "This is near the colony of New Horizon. Our analysts believe it's a superweapon of some kind." "What type of weapon?" asked the president, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Based on energy readings, we think it's a gravitational disruptor. It could tear a planet apart from the inside." The room fell silent. Defense Secretary Alan Winters, who had activated Sierra 7 protocol after the failed peace talks, spoke first. "Mr. President, we have less than 48 hours before they're in firing position. We should evacuate as many colonists as possible and deploy our fleet in defensive positions." President Summers nodded slowly. "Do it. And send a message to the Galactic Council demanding intervention." "Sir," said Kimberly, "the Council has gone silent. Our ambassador reports they're still in emergency session and refusing all human communications." The president looked at the map again, at the millions of human lives represented by each colony dot, soon to be in Vraxian weapon range. "Then we stand alone," he said. "Heaven help us all." The attack began without warning. No formal declaration of war. No final demand for surrender. Just sudden, overwhelming violence across human space. The Vraxian war fleet struck first at humanity's communication network. Massive energy beams tore through relay stations positioned between Earth and its colonies. Within 6 minutes, 80% of faster-than-light communications went dark. On the colony world of Avalon, residents woke to air raid sirens as Vraxian ships entered orbit. Governor Peter Collins had received the evacuation order just hours before, but the colony's transport ships could only take a fraction of the population. He stood in the control center, watching radar screens fill with enemy vessels. "Begin emergency transport procedures," he ordered. "Priority for children and medical patients." Before the first evacuation ship could clear the atmosphere, Vraxian bombers began their assault. Buildings crumbled. The spaceport took a direct hit. Governor Collins died with his staff as the control center collapsed around them. On the agricultural world of Prosperity, the attack pattern was the same. Vraxian ships destroyed communication arrays first, then targeted military installations. When the colony's small defense force launched fighters, they were overwhelmed 5-1. Heather Barnes, civilian administrator of New Horizon Colony, had spent the night organizing evacuation plans. The colony's population of 3 million was far too large to evacuate quickly. As dawn broke, she saw the massive shapes of Vraxian warships through her office window. "Activate planetary defenses," she told her security chief. New Horizon had been built with defensive shield generators and ground-based laser cannons, unlike most human colonies. The shields flared bright blue as the first Vraxian missiles struck. For 18 minutes, they held. Heather allowed herself to hope they might survive long enough for help to arrive. Then she saw it through the window, the super weapon that intelligence had warned about. The massive device, nearly the size of a small moon, moved into position above New Horizon's northern continent. The Vraxian ships pulled back, clearing the area around it. "What are they doing?" asked someone behind her. Heather didn't answer. She watched as the device began to glow, first orange, then white-hot. A beam of energy fired not at the surface, but deep into the planet itself. At first, nothing happened. Then the ground began to shake, not just a tremor, but violent convulsions that tore the landscape apart. Fissures opened across the surface. Mountains collapsed. The sea rose in walls of water hundreds of feet high. "Gravitational disruptor," Heather whispered, remembering the briefing. "It's tearing the planet apart from inside." The colony's shields, designed to stop weapons from space, did nothing against the planet's own rebellion. Buildings sank into suddenly liquid ground. Entire cities disappeared into newly formed chasms. 3 million lives gone in less than an hour. Near the Tau Ceti system, Captain William Boyd of the Earth vessel Intrepid was on routine patrol when his sensors detected Vraxian ships entering the system. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Send emergency alert to Earth Command." The communications officer looked up, face pale. "Sir, all channels to Earth are jammed. I can't get through." "Try the emergency frequencies." "All blocked, sir." The Intrepid shuddered as the first enemy shots struck its shields. Boyd assessed the situation quickly. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered. The tactical display showed 5 Vraxian warships closing in. "Damage report," he called as another hit rocked the ship. "Shields at 40%. Hull breach on Deck 3. Engineering reports reactor damage." Boyd made the hardest decision of his career. Prepare for emergency slip space jump. All power to engines. "But sir," half the crew was still fighting fires in the lower decks. His first officer protested. "If we stay, we all die. And Earth gets no warning of what happened here," Boyd said, his voice breaking. "Set course for the nearest human outpost." As the slip space engines powered up, Boyd sent a final ship-wide message. "To those we leave behind, your sacrifice will not be forgotten. Your families will know you died saving others." The Intrepid vanished into slip space with half its crew still aboard, carrying critical information about Vraxian tactics and the destruction of the colonies. Behind them, Vraxian ships continued their advance toward Earth, leaving only silence and death in their wake. 3 days after the initial attacks, Earth was in chaos. Refugee ships from outer colonies arrived with tales of destruction. News feeds showed images of ruined worlds. Families gathered at spaceports, desperate for word from loved ones on distant planets. In Washington, D.C., a Vraxian bombing run had destroyed Earth Command headquarters. President Summers had barely escaped, now operating from a mobile command center that changed location every 6 hours. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Joseph Carter stood in an underground bunker built decades ago for just such a crisis. Wall screens showed the locations of remaining human ships, scattered and disorganized after the surprise attack. "How many vessels do we have left?" he asked his staff. 42 warships confirmed operational, sir," replied Commander Nancy Ford. "Another 37 have reported damage but can still fight. We've lost contact with over half the fleet." Carter nodded grimly. With Earth Command destroyed, he was now the highest-ranking military officer still alive. "Begin Operation Scattered Shield. All remaining ships to form defensive groups around key colony worlds. Priority to Earth, Mars, and Europa." "What about the outer colonies, sir?" asked Commander Ford. Carter's face hardened. "We don't have enough ships to protect everyone. We have to preserve our core systems." Across the room, a communications officer called out, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Intrepid." Captain Boyd made it to the Proxima Centauri outpost. For the first time in days, a glimmer of hope appeared in the Admiral's eyes. "Put him through." Meanwhile, in a research facility hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Andrea Russell worked frantically. Her team of scientists had been developing the NOVA project for years, a theoretical weapons system designed to destabilize stars. It had been considered too dangerous to build. Until now. "The containment field is holding at 87%, reported her assistant, Ron Baker. "But we're pushing the limits of the technology." "We don't have a choice," Andrea replied, not looking up from her calculations. "The Vraxians used a planet killer on New Horizon. We need something that can match that power." Her secure phone beeped. It was President Summers himself. "Dr. Russell, I've been briefed on the NOVA project," he said, his voice tired but determined. "The ethical concerns that held us back before, they no longer apply. How soon can it be ready?" 2 weeks for a prototype, Mr. President. A month for full deployment." "You have 1 week for the prototype. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. In space, the diplomatic situation was shifting rapidly. The alien species that had remained neutral during the peace talks now found themselves forced to choose sides in a widening conflict. Ambassador Carl Jenkins, one of the few diplomats who had not been at the Galactic Council during the peace talks, met with representatives of the Galaxis, a race of traders who had maintained good relations with humans. "We can offer sanctuary for your refugees," said the Galaxis ambassador, a tall being with silver skin. "But we cannot provide military aid. The Vraxians would target us next." "Sanctuary will save lives," Jenkins replied gratefully. "But we need allies who can help us fight back." That same day, a ship from the insectoid Nix-R arrived in Earth orbit. The Nix-R had fought wars against the Vraxian centuries before humans reached space. "Our species has not forgotten Vraxian brutality," said the Nix-R representative, her mandibles clicking between words. "We propose an alliance of necessity. Together, we might survive what neither could alone." President Summers accepted the offer immediately. Nix-R weapon technology was centuries ahead of human development, while human ships were faster and more maneuverable than the bulky Nix-R vessels. Together, they might stand a chance. As the sun set over a frightened Earth, Admiral Carter addressed the combined fleet commanders. His message was simple: "We are no longer fighting just for territory. We are fighting for the right of our species to exist. Retreat is not an option. We stand here, or humanity falls forever." 2 weeks into the war, Vraxian forces pushed deeper into human territory. Their warships appeared over colony after colony, expecting quick surrender. Instead, they found humans who refused to give up. General Keith Ramsey, commander of ground forces on the mining colony Ventura, watched from a hillside bunker as Vraxian dropships landed in the main settlement below. His forces were outnumbered 10-1, with no hope of reinforcement. "Sir, should we surrender?" asked Lieutenant Jane Foster beside him. "No," Ramsey said firmly. "We fight differently." He pointed to a map showing the colony's extensive mining tunnels. "The Vraxians expect us to defend buildings and spaceports. Instead, we'll abandon the surface. Take the fight underground where their numbers mean less." Within days, Ramsey's forces began a campaign that confused and frustrated the Vraxian commanders. Humans appeared from hidden tunnels, attacked quickly, then disappeared before the aliens could respond. Supply depots exploded. Communication towers fell. Vraxian patrols vanished in the night. Similar resistance emerged on other invaded worlds. What the Vraxians expected to be a swift conquest became a grueling battle of attrition. On Ventura, mining engineer Samantha Lewis made a discovery that would change the course of the war. Working in an isolated lab with samples from a damaged Vraxian vessel, she noticed something strange. "Look at this," she told scientist Dennis Clark, pointing to a microscope display. "The Vraxian biotechnology is breaking down when exposed to common Earth bacteria." Dennis stared at the screen. "Their organic ship components are literally dissolving." "The Vraxians evolved in a completely different bacterial environment," Samantha explained. "Their biotech has no resistance to Earth microbes." Dennis grabbed his communication device. "We need to tell General Ramsey immediately. This could be a weapon more effective than any bomb." Meanwhile, Captain William Boyd, who had escaped the destruction of his ship Intrepid, reached the hidden human outpost at Proxima Centauri. He expected to find a small research station. Instead, he discovered a massive shipyard hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. "Welcome to Project Lazarus, Captain," said Victor Reynolds, the lead engineer, as he guided Boyd through the facility. "Earth Command established this base 5 years ago, off all official records." Boyd stared in amazement at the ships being built in the enormous construction base. They looked like nothing he had ever seen, sleeker than standard human vessels, with strange hull configurations and weapon systems he didn't recognize. "What are these?" he asked, stopping before a particularly large vessel. "The future of human space warfare," Reynolds replied with pride. We've been collecting and reverse engineering technology from a dozen alien species, some traded willingly. Some we salvaged from abandoned wrecks. The result is a fleet that combines the best aspects of different alien technologies. Does Earth Command know about this? Only the highest levels. After the peace talks collapsed, we received orders to accelerate production. We now have 27 ships ready for combat. Boyd thought of Earth's desperate situation, with Admiral Carter trying to coordinate a defense with too few ships against overwhelming odds. How soon can these ships join the fight? He asked. Reynolds smiled grimly. We were waiting for an experienced commander. Congratulations, Commodore Boyd. The Lazarus fleet is yours. Across human space, the resistance grew. On New Terra, farmers poisoned Vraxian water supplies with Earth chemicals harmless to humans but toxic to the invaders. On the frontier world of Liberty, civilians formed militia units that harassed Vraxian patrols. On Earth itself, scientists worked around the clock developing new weapons and defenses. The Vraxian High Command began receiving troubling reports. Their casualties were mounting. Their supply lines stretched thin. And most concerning, human resistance was growing stronger, not weaker, with each passing day. For the first time, doubt crept into Vraxian strategic planning. They had expected to face a disorganized, demoralized enemy. Instead, they found a species that, when pushed to the edge of extinction, revealed unexpected strength and determination. Admiral Carter stood in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, studying the holographic map of human space. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a small smile. Operation Thunderstrike is approved, he announced to his staff. Inform all commanders to begin final preparations. On the edge of human space, newly promoted Commodore William Boyd addressed the crews of the Lazarus fleet. 27 ships of advanced design stood ready, their crews a mix of veteran spacers and elite pilots pulled from across human forces. Today we stop running, Boyd told them from the bridge of his flagship, renamed Phoenix from the remains of his old vessel Intrepid. Today we show the Vraxians that humanity will not go quietly into the night. The Lazarus fleet jumped into slit space, their advanced engines allowing them to appear where the Vraxians least expected, behind enemy lines, targeting their supply convoys and fuel depots. At the same time, the Nixar forces launched their own offensive, striking Vraxian outposts along their shared border. The insectoid warriors deployed weapons that bypassed Vraxian shields, causing panic among enemy troops used to technological superiority. On Earth, President Summers addressed the surviving colonies via emergency broadcast. His face showed the strain of recent weeks, but his voice remained steady. My fellow humans, today we begin our counterattack. For too long, we have suffered under Vraxian aggression. They believed they could break our spirit. They were wrong. His speech reached even occupied colonies, where resistance fighters spread his words through hidden communication networks. Humanity does not surrender. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. And after this conflict ends, the galaxy will know that we are not to be underestimated again. The speech spread beyond human space, reaching other species who had watched the conflict with concern. Several races that had remained neutral began sending medical supplies and food to human refugee centers, careful not to provide direct military aid, but showing where their sympathies lay. In her underwater laboratory, Dr. Andrea Russell completed the NOVA prototype. The weapon, no larger than a small shuttle, contained technology that could affect the nuclear reactions within stars. Begin the test sequence, she ordered, watching as the prototype was loaded onto a transport ship. The test target was an uninhabited solar system with a red dwarf star. Military observers watched from a safe distance as the NOVA device approached the star and activated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the star's output fluctuated wildly. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface. Had there been planets in close orbit, they would have been scorched clean of life. The test is a success, Dr. Russell reported to President Summers. The device can destabilize a star temporarily or permanently, depending on the settings. Can it be used against Vraxian homeworlds? The president asked. Yes, she answered simply. But such use would kill billions. Is that an order you're prepared to give? The president's face showed his inner conflict. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. For now, prepare 5 more units as a deterrent. Unknown to the humans, Vraxian intelligence monitored the test. The results sent shockwaves through their high command. Humans, considered technologically inferior just weeks ago, now possessed star-killing weapons. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council, which had initially refused to intervene in what they considered a local conflict, called an emergency session. Footage of Vraxian forces using their gravitational disruptor on New Horizon had finally reached the council chambers. The mediator Jorkal appeared visibly shaken as he addressed the representatives. What we have witnessed goes beyond acceptable warfare. The complete destruction of a populated world violates our most sacred laws. Several species that had previously supported the Vraxians or remained neutral now argued for sanctions against the Vraxian Dominion. The balance of galactic opinion was shifting. As Commodore Boyd's Lazarus fleet continued striking Vraxian targets, news of human resistance spread across the galaxy. The story of a newer species fighting back against overwhelming odds captured the imagination of many. What began as a one-sided invasion was becoming a true war, one the Vraxians had not expected to fight. The star system of Arcturus became the site of the war's largest battle. Vraxian High Command ordered half their fleet to gather there, planning to crush the human resistance in one decisive engagement. Captain Olivia Daniels, now commanding the flagship Defiance, received the intelligence reports with grim determination. The bridge crew fell silent as the tactical display showed the enemy fleet, over 200 Vraxian warships arranged in their standard attack formation. They still outnumber us 3-1, even with the Nix-R reinforcements, said her first officer. Olivia studied the display, her mind racing through possibilities. Numbers aren't everything, she said finally. Vraxian tactics are predictable. They always use the same approach because it's always worked for them. She called an emergency meeting with all ship commanders. We won't win this battle fighting the way the Vraxians expect, she told them. Instead of our usual defense line, we'll split our forces into 3 battle groups. As the combined human and Nix-R fleet jumped into the Arcturus system, the Vraxian commanders felt confident in their victory. Their forces held position, waiting to envelop the enemy in their standard pincer movement. But the human fleet did not arrive as a single unit. Olivia's battle plan sent ships appearing at 3 different points around the Vraxian formation. The enemy commanders hesitated, unsure which group was the main threat. All ships, execute Pattern Omega, Olivia ordered. The human vessels began a complex series of maneuvers, darting between Vraxian ship clusters, breaking their formation apart. The Nix-R warships launched waves of their crystalline missiles, bypassing Vraxian shields. The battle descended into chaos as the disciplined Vraxian formation dissolved into individual ship battles. Meanwhile, on the ground, General Ramsey's forces launched their campaign to retake the colony of Prosperity. For weeks, his troops had been gathering intelligence on Vraxian positions while testing the bacterial weapon developed by Samantha Lewis. Deploy the aerosol drones, Ramsey ordered from his mobile command center. Hundreds of small drones rose from hidden locations, releasing clouds of specially cultured Earth bacteria over Vraxian positions. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vraxian biotechnology began to fail. Their organic ships lost power. Their living armor died on their bodies. Weapons systems shut down. In the confusion, human ground forces struck hard and fast. By the end of the day, they had captured the colony's capital. Among the prisoners taken was High Commander Zelthur, the same Vraxian who had stormed out of the peace talks months earlier. How is this possible? Zelthur demanded when brought before General Ramsey. You were supposed to be easy prey. That was your first mistake, Ramsey replied. Never underestimate a species fighting for survival. In space, the Battle of Arcturus reached its climax. The Vraxian flagship, a massive dreadnought, targeted the Defiance directly. Both ships took heavy damage in the exchange of fire. Shields failing. Hull breach on decks 5 through 8, reported Olivia's damage control officer. Divert all power to forward weapons, Olivia ordered. Bring us in closer. The Defiance plunged toward the Vraxian flagship, firing all weapons. At the last moment, Olivia ordered a maneuver that brought her ship skimming along the enemy vessel's hull, their weapons tearing into vital systems at point-blank range. When the smoke cleared, the Vraxian dreadnought drifted powerless. Across the battlefield, other Vraxian ships began to retreat as news spread of their flagship's defeat. For the first time since the war began, the Vraxian advance had not just been slowed, it had been stopped. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter received the news with cautious optimism. This is just one battle, he reminded his staff, but it proves they can be beaten. The Galactic Council finally voted to intervene, dispatching peacekeeping forces to create demilitarized zones between human and Vraxian territory. Several council members who had dismissed humans as primitive now watched recordings of the Battle of Arcturus with newfound respect. The Vraxian leadership, facing unexpected defeats and council sanctions, sent a coded message to Earth. They were willing to discuss surrender terms. The tide had turned. 6 months after the collapse of the original peace talks, representatives from all major species gathered once again at the rebuilt Galactic Council station. The meeting hall looked much the same, but the power dynamics had shifted dramatically. Ambassador Susan Wright led the human delegation. A thin scar ran across her left cheek, a reminder of an assassination attempt during the war. She stood taller now, representing not just Earth, but a united human government that had emerged stronger from the conflict. The terms for peace are not negotiable, she told the assembled delegates, her voice clear and firm. The Vraxian Dominion must withdraw from all human territories. They must pay reparations for worlds damaged in their attacks, and they must dismantle all gravitational disruptor weapons. The Vraxian representative, not High Commander Zell Thur, who remained in human custody, but a lower-ranking official named Krexval, glared across the table. Your demands go beyond reasonable expectations of a peace settlement. Your actions went beyond reasonable expectations of warfare, Susan countered. The complete destruction of New Horizon was an act of genocide. The evidence has been presented to this council. Indeed, during the months following the Battle of Arcturus, investigators had uncovered Vraxian military orders showing their plan for systematic elimination of humans from the galaxy. The documents revealed that the attack had never been about territory. It had been an attempt to wipe out a species the Vraxians saw as a future threat. This evidence had shifted galactic opinion dramatically. Species that had once viewed humans as dangerous upstarts now saw them as survivors of an attempted extinction. Mediator Jorkel, who had presided over the failed peace talks months earlier, now spoke with greater respect toward the human delegation. The Council has reviewed all evidence. We find the human terms to be justified under our laws of warfare. The Vraxian representative had no choice but to accept. Their military was crippled, their biotech weapons rendered useless by human bacterial countermeasures, and their political support among other species had collapsed. Back on Earth, the heroes of the war received recognition for their roles in saving humanity. Admiral Carter and Commodore Boyd stood before a crowd of thousands as President Summers presented them with the highest military honors. Through your leadership, humanity survived its darkest hour, the President said. Your names will be remembered as long as our species endures. Dr. Andrea Russell's NOVA technology was placed under international control, with strict protocols for its use only as a deterrent. The weapon that could destroy stars would never be used lightly, but its existence ensured that no species would again think humans defenseless. General Ramsey's guerrilla tactics became standard training for all human ground forces. Samantha Lewis received the Global Science Medal for her discovery of the bacterial weapon against Vraxian biotechnology. In the Council's concluding session, a new galactic charter was signed. For the first time, It included specific provisions protecting developing species from aggression by more established powers. It acknowledged humanity's right to self-defense and expansion within reasonable boundaries. Most importantly, it created a mutual defense agreement among council members. Never again would one species be left to face extinction alone. As the signing ceremony concluded, Ambassador Wright made eye contact with the Vraxian representative across the chamber. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. Humanity would never again be underestimated. On the rebuilt colony of New Horizon, survivors gathered for a memorial service. The planet still showed scars from the gravitational weapon, with new mountain ranges and seas where cities once stood. But humans had returned, rebuilding on the very world the Vraxians had tried to destroy. A massive monument of black stone listed the names of the millions who had died. At its base, a simple plaque read, "Through our darkest hour, we discovered our greatest strength. Humanity endures." As the sun set over the new settlement, children played in parks while construction continued on homes and businesses. In orbit above, ships from a dozen alien species brought trade goods and visitors, many coming to learn from the species that had fought back from the edge of extinction. Humanity had not just survived. It had earned its place among the stars.